Now, here's an important topic the mainstream media won't cover. The top 10 most famous Bristolians of all time. Bristol is, of course, the greatest city in the world since Babylon, and is profoundly debauched even in relative terms. For those who don't know anything about Bristol, it was the second city of England for centuries before the Industrial Revolution, and played a major part in the English Civil War as a royalist stronghold. Before we get into the top 10, it's worth giving a few honourable mentions to a few Bristolian inventions you might not have heard of. Firstly, let's talk about urban animations. Wallace and Gromit, Shaun the Sheep, and indeed Chicken Run, starring Mel Gibson, the popular Anglophobic propagandist and part-time anti-Semite. There's also J.S. Fry's and Sons, the Bristolian chocolate company, who invented the first chocolate bar in 1847, as well as, perhaps more importantly, in 1963, the Creme Egg. The Creme Egg. Now, of course, rebranded Cadbury's Creme Egg, but in fact a Bristolian invention. There's also Ribena, which was invented in Bristol in 1938. Interesting fact about Ribena, it was actually distributed as a vitamin C supplement during World War II, as citrus fruit became increasingly scarce due to German submarines sinking British shipping. Then, of course, there's the BBC Natural History Unit under its powerful overlord, Sir David Attenborough, lover of sloths and other furry things. Basically the Concorde, we mostly did that by ourselves. And, of course, some other interesting inventions. A man by the name of John Watkins Brett invented underseas cables. Interesting. And a man by the name of P.J. Kurzweil who invented the motorbike sidecar, perhaps the most popular mode of transportation across the Western world, and indeed the most practical. Right, and without any further ado, let's go into the top 10 greatest Bristolians of all time. Number 10, Darth Vader. Yes, that's right, Darth Vader. A lot of people know this story, but for those who don't, the actor who played the man who's essentially in the suit was a West Country gentleman by the name of David Prowse. Now, he was mocked by Lucas and various other degenerates on the set of Star Wars and called Darth Farmer cruelly, and his voice was ultimately dubbed over by the dulcet tones of James Earl Jones, which some would argue was a great move. I suggest was a terrible mistake, perhaps the worst thing George Lucas has ever done. Worse indeed than the prequels. Number 9. We have to talk about some artistic types at some point during this list. So I'm going to go for Massive Attack, a popular band in the trip-hop genre, which was born in Bristol. A couple of other shout-outs of some Bristolian artists. That fool Damien Hirst, allegedly the UK's richest artist, basically copying Star Wars. Han Solo, Frozen in Carbonite, come on. There's Banksy as well, of course, world famous, world renowned, the graffiti artist Banksy, peddling his wares all around town. It's a famous image of Death paddling down the River Avon on the side of Thekla. I hate Banksy, man's an idiot. Stars of stage and screen at number 8. How about this? James May of Top Gear, the most popular show in the world, as Clarkson would say. And the Stig, yes, the Stig, the white, well, not the original, the white Stig, which is of course the best Stig, as anyone will tell you. Some say he was indeed Bristolian. And number 7, Stephen Merchant, funny man and writing partner of Ricky Gervais, and star of Portal 2, which makes him the first West Country man to ever feature as the star of any video game. Other Bristolian funny men include Russell Howard, Justin Lee Collins, and that sweaty dude Lee Evans, who was in fact born here and then raised in less developed climes away east. And number 6, Cary Grant, legendary movie star. Never seen any of his movies though myself, because I'm a Philistine. Number 5, Blackbeard, infamous pirate, also known as Edward Teach. Sailed, of course, on Queen Anne's Revenge. Now, this is a long-running irritant for many Bristolians, is that many people, particularly out in the colonies, in the States, for example, they know the Bristolian accent only as a pirate accent, and don't really believe it's real when they encounter people of our persuasion. Our sort of modern perception of pirates speaking with a West Country accent was really brought back by Hollywood. The actor Robert Newton, his portrayal of Long John Silver, particularly in Disney's 1950 film adaptation, really defined the modern image we have of a pirate, including the West Country accent. Now, this probably isn't a myth. There obviously is a considerable amount of diversity in terms of accents on pirate ships in the Caribbean. There were significant amounts of Scots, Irish and Welsh, and actually considerable amounts of escaped African slaves. But the largest group of pirates in the Caribbean came from the southwest of England. So Blackbeard, a native of Bristol. Francis Drake actually was from Tavistock. Unclear if he had a West Country accent, probably not. Now, Blackbeard, it's believed, was born in Bristol and almost certainly spoke with a strong Bristolian accent. The portrayal he's seen in movies, probably inspired by Robert Louis Stevenson's novel Treasure Island. Now, there's a lot of pirate pubs, in fact, in Bristol. One of them, the Llandoger Trow, was in fact supposedly the inspiration for a pub in Treasure Island. So there's a link there. There are other pubs, for example, the Hole in the Wall, which were supposedly quite closely related to smuggling. So Bristol Harbour side, a few hundred years ago, would have been basically teeming with pirates. Gone are the hipsters, gone is the falafel, in are the pirates, in is the rum. Probably some cider there as well, you'd hope. Now, various studies have been done, and it's been suggested that actually probably a large chunk of pirates in the Caribbean would have spoke with some kind of variant of West Country accents. You'd have also heard quite a lot of Welsh and Irish as well. But a very large proportion of pirates were in fact recruited or sailed out of Bristol. Number 4 would be Samuel Plimsoll, a 19th century Liberal MP. Now, incidentally, the shoes are named after him. Also called in the West Country in Wales as Daps. You might remember from school. Now, Samuel Plimsoll's quite a serious one. He has the Plimsoll line named after him. That's the load line on ships. Obviously, depending on how much weight is in the ship, it will sink, or rise. And you see that line on the side of the ship will basically tell you if it's overloaded. That was an innovation brought in by him to stop ships sinking. So this is a man who's actually saved thousands of lives. So that's a serious one there for you. Number 3, John Cabot. Now, he was a Venetian originally by the name of Giovanni Caboto, of course, part of the enormous Italian Bristolian community. John Cabot obtained letters patent from King Henry VII of England in 1496 for a voyage of discovery. In the summer of 1497, he crossed the Atlantic Ocean and discovered mainland North America. He probably landed on the Labrador coast. There's actually a plaque in St John's, Newfoundland, commemorating a landing there, and by extension the founding of the British Empire. Now, Christopher Columbus, of course, propaganda will tell you, discovered the Americas. But in fact, during his first voyage in 1492, he only landed in the West Indies, Cuba and Dominica. He didn't actually reach mainland North America. Now, if you're being pedantic, of course, you could suggest that Leif Erikson discovered Newfoundland 500 years before any European. But the Vikings didn't know what they discovered, and that's not the point anyway. Bristolians did it first. Not that weird dandy Christopher Columbus. Look at his shoes, moron. On a related note, at number 2, Richard of Merrick. Allegedly the Americas was named after him. He was the man who funded John Cabot. He was incidentally also Sheriff of Bristol for a period. I maintain that's pretty huge. The Americas were named after a Bristolian. That's quite big. Number 1. Isambard Kingdom Brunel. Of course it is. Of course it was. Brunel, the mighty engineer, named by the BBC as the second greatest Briton of all time, beaten only by Sir Winston Churchill, who worked for a time at Bristol University, incidentally. Brunel had a storied career. He was one of the great engineers of his time. He's a man from a time in which people dared to dream, man. These were incredible achievements. I mean, he started his career by assisting his father, Mark Brunel, in the building of the first tunnel under a navigable river, i.e. the Thames. He also designed the Clifton Suspension Bridge. Brunel was the chief engineer on the Great Western Railway. Brunel aimed to link London with Bristol by train. But he was thinking far bigger than this. Once the trains reached Bristol, the idea was that giant steamships would then take passengers onwards to North America. It was Great Western, not in the sense that it was moving from London to Bristol. It was connecting London to New York City. He in fact offered his services free of charge to the Great Western Steamship Company, which was formed by a friend of his by the name of Thomas Guppy, based on a conversation with Brunel. Now, to facilitate this grand ambition, Brunel designed several ships for this new shipping company and built them in Bristol. There was also a later ship, SS Great Eastern, but that was not built in Bristol. The first of these ships was the SS Great Western, at the time the longest ship ever built. These moves were a response to Bristol's position as a transatlantic port being overtaken by Liverpool over the course of the Industrial Revolution. The second ship designed by Brunel was the SS Great Britain, which is still moored in Bristol. Now, the Great Britain was the first propeller-driven ocean-going iron ship, and at the time it was the largest ship ever built. That was in 1843. Sadly, it spent a considerable amount of time at the bottom of Stanley Harbour in the Falkland Islands, but was rescued, brought back to Bristol, and it's now been preserved, and it's a very popular tourist attraction. Now, for me, Brunel is number one, because he's a man from a time in which people really dared to dream, that big solutions for big problems. There's a hill in the way, we'll build a tunnel through it. There's an ocean in the way, we'll build a massive boat and take Bristolians to New York City. We're going to take over the world. There you have it, the list of the 10 greatest Bristolians of all time. I can only hope in future that I myself will be listed among these names, perhaps given a statue, or some kind of freedom of the city, indeed, in order to drive my livestock through the bear pit and various other landmarks. Thank you.